don't know whose this one is, so I'll set it over here. Great to be in the house of the Lord today, is it not? Bear with me, I have the allergies. At least I'm praying they're allergies and nothing more. But to augment that, though, I did drink a Monster and had a chocolate donut and a regular donut. So I should be able to do this hour-long sermon in about 30 minutes. We'll see. We'll see. Exodus chapter 31. Weren't we in 23 last week? Yeah, I know. We just kind of sped time up for a little bit. Exodus chapter 31. The sections between 23 and following are the prescription of the things for the tabernacle. And that still leaves me some meat left on the bone if I wanted to go back to another study in Exodus. And I wanted to stay with the theme of last week's sermon. Last week, in 23, the children of Israel were told the law, they were told the sundry laws, they were told the things that God required of them, and they were told that if they obeyed God and followed Him, that He would be a terrifying force for their enemies and would conquer the land and go before them. But if they refused, He would not suffer them long. And their response was, well, we'll obey. Actually, they said, we agree to do this. And then the last response is, we agree to do this, and we will obey. And so now we're going to jump forward to 31, where it talks about the Sabbath right before they go and violate everything they said they would do. And the reason why is, Moses is making the point that of all the 10 commandments to honor, the Sabbath is of crucial importance because it is a barometer. You will know whether or not you have another God before you and how you observe the Sabbath. You will know whether or not that you have a false idol if you don't observe the Sabbath. You love your neighbor, want to kill your neighbor. It's all wrapped up in how one observes, because it's this barometer that we have. Because if you're not spiritually healthy enough to attend the Sabbath, you're not spiritually healthy enough to follow any of the others. So let's pick up here in 31. 31, verse 12 and following. And the Lord said to Moses, you are to speak to the people of Israel and say, above all, you shall keep my Sabbaths. For this is a sign between me and you, and throughout your generations, that you may know that I, the Lord, sanctify you. You shall keep the Sabbath because it is holy for you. Everyone who profanes it shall be put to death. I don't think he's kidding here. Whoever does any work on it, that soul shall be cut off from amongst his people. 6 days you shall work, or shall work be done, but on the seventh day is the Sabbath of solemn rest. Solemn rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath shall be put to death. Therefore the people of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout their generations as a covenant forever. For it is a sign between me and the people of Israel that 6 days the Lord made the heaven and earth, and the 7th day is rest. He rested and refreshed. You will honor the Sabbath. So the question is, how do you honor the Sabbath? Is the Sabbath day... You say, I don't know what you're thinking. There's some of you going, but we don't worship on Saturday. Got it. Tracking. So is the New Testament writers too. And they have an answer for you. How do you honor the Sabbath? Notice the phraseology that appeared repeatedly in there, that it's a sanctified day. It's a holy day for you, and it's a holy day for the Lord. This holy day means set apart. Holy means set apart. It is set apart for you, and it's set apart for the Lord. So how do you honor the Sabbath? Is there any distinction between your Sabbath day and your Friday? Is the day today any more unique or special than tomorrow? Or do you do or plan to do after you leave here the very things that you would do on Monday? participate in the same activities on Monday. See, he gives a requirement. He says 6 days. You get 6 days to work, 1 day's mine. See, what happens is, as a culture, when we begin to devalue a thing, our children will hold it in absolute contempt. And so how we treat the Sabbath today will affect the next generation who will not honor it at all. It's evident when you see, at one time we used to have blue laws, right? At one time, school systems didn't do any activities on the weekends or on Wednesdays. It's because of the cultural understanding of you don't do anything on Sunday or Wednesdays because people are at church. Nowadays, we have people doing things all the time. You say, but we don't worship on Saturday. I'm glad you asked that question. The book of Acts, you don't have to turn there, I'll read it to you. Chapter 20. This is where we shift from Saturday to Sunday. Acts 20, verse 7. On the first day of the week, when they gathered together to break bread, that would be the Lord's Supper, Paul talked with them, but he intended to depart the next day, but he prolonged his speaking until midnight. How many of y'all, look at that, midnight. He started talking. I've got 13 more hours to go. Buckle up. Long sermons in those days were not uncommon. People complain how long mine are. How would you like to be going till midnight? Matter of fact, in the book of Nehemiah, they went from sunup till noon, and then from noon on to the end of the day. But on the first day of the week, that would be today. Why? Because that is the day in which the Lord rises from the grave. It's called the Lord's Day. I believe John makes that known in the book of Revelation. 1 Corinthians 16. Now, concerning the collection of the saints, this would also be in reference to tithing. I direct the churches of Galatia so that you are to do on the first day of the week. So the church has shifted its Sabbath day to Sunday because the honor of the Lord's resurrection is called the Lord's Day. But just because we shift that there doesn't mean that we get to treat it any less special than what he prescribes. It is a unique day. It is a set-apart day. It is unique for the resting of the body. I hate sermons with alliteration, but this one has two sets. How do you honor the Lord's Sabbath? Do you honor it with your time, your talent, your tithe? Because in so doing, you will receive rest, refreshment, and renewal. We want the rest, refreshment, and renewal without ever sacrificing our time, our talent, and our tithe. And you cannot get this without doing this. It is unique, it is set apart, it is holy. Is your time set apart? Is the time you spend week to week in preparation for the Sabbath, is it set apart? Is it unique? Or is it just like any other day? Is your talent set apart? If you will go back and read, and the passages coming up, you will see where God said, and I indwell them with the ability to make these things for my altar, for my tent of meeting. You will see that God crafts stonemasons with the ability to carve. Now, they are already stonemasons, but he gives them unique ability to do greater things. I don't have a talent. You're lying to yourself. I have the spiritual gift of discouragement. I embrace that. Do you honor the Lord with your tithe? Is that set apart? Is that holy? How you observe the Sabbath is going to determine how you live your life. Well, how do I go about? What would I do? How do I go about honoring the Lord on the Sabbath? I think Hebrews chapter 10 really kind of helps us understand why the Sabbath is important, why it's important to do this. You look at Hebrews chapter 10, verse 23. I'll read it to you. Let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering. For he who promised is faithful. This will be a reference to Jesus Christ. Let us consider how to stir one another up to love and good works. This doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it doesn't happen from your living room. You actually have to be together for this to occur. Not neglecting the meeting together, that would be what we are doing, which is the habit of some, but encouraging one another all the more as you see the day is drawing near. The author of Hebrews is making the point that the day in which the Lord's return is drawing near, and what happens is because it has been 2 millennia since that's been written, we believe that it is a far off time. And the fact of the matter is, it is an almost certain occurrence, and we should live our life with the confident expectation that he could return. But since we don't hold these things important. We don't hold the confidence and the confession of the Lord who saved us in such a way that when we go about our week, we take time to figure out how to love and encourage one another, and we forsake the gathering together of the body. The primary purpose of the church, folks, is not for people to come, get saved, and walk an aisle. That is very Charles Finian. That comes about in the 1800s. For millennia, the purpose of the church was to train and equip you to go out into that neighborhood and to make disciples, period. Now, if they come into the church, they hear the message of the Lord, as Wesley does, and their heart is strangely warm, great, that is icing on the cake. But that is not the primary function of the church. The primary function of the church is to build disciples. The word disciple necessitates already that one is a convert. Matthew 28, Great Commission. Go and make what? Converts or disciples? Disciples. It is in the gathering together of the body that you are refreshed, renewed, and find rest. How does that happen? Well, it requires your time, your talent, and your tithe. You can't have one without the other. So let me ask you, in your time, how do you prep for the Sabbath? Because in the ancient Near Eastern world, in the early church, in the Reformed era, they prepped for the Sabbath. Well, when does that preparation begin? The minute you leave here today is when you begin prepping for the following Sunday. I preach through the Bible. I preach through chapters to chapter. And this morning, while we were in chapter 23 and now we're in 31, it's a big jump, but for most weeks, you know that after I get done with 31, next week we'll be in 32. How many read ahead in preparation of preparing your heart and mind for what the Lord is going to say on Sunday morning? How many Sunday school teachers do I have who Sunday morning get up, eat their Cheerios, and do their Sunday school lesson? Or Saturday morning, instead of prepping through the week? I got it. We all are busy. Yeah, Stephanie, I got a little 30-minute hourglass. And yesterday I had it out on the counter, and I'm trying to start reading 30 minutes every day because I'm going to start my doctoral program here in a little bit. And one of the things about a doctoral program is you must read. And you must read a lot. I hate reading. I keep wondering when they're going to make a movie from the theology books, but that'd be a really weird movie. Really, really weird. And Hollywood has tried, and we ended up with Noah. But so I spend 30 minutes a day with an hourglass. Literally, you can ask her. She bought it for me for Christmas with an hourglass. It's turned over, and I watch. And yesterday, Kimmy came over and says, "Your hourglass is done." And I said, "Yeah, but I'm almost to the end of the chapter." So I finished reading. I loathe reading, by the way. I really do. And goes to another issue. But it's a must, especially if I want to claim to be knowledgeable about that text. How many of us throughout the week, and you say, "Well, man, I'm glad you just mentioned teachers." Okay, Sunday school participants, we buy you a book and we give it to you. And sometimes you bring it back. How many of you have read your lesson during the week and meditated on it to be prepared for Sunday morning to honor the Sabbath and make it a holy day? Or do you simply come as consumers like you would to a movie theater, sit in a pew and go like catfish at the end of a drain pipe? That's consumerism. It's not godly. Leads to anemic Christians. Do you honor the Lord with your time? Because the Sabbath is a set-apart day. It's a day when you get here that your mind is focused on the things of God, and it's more than 30 minutes on the drive in. And if you're like when I was a kid, Mom and Dad and you and the other two siblings are squabbling in the car, but man, when that door opened at church, how you doing, brother? Oh, doing great, doing great. And he probably, no, I had a great week. Oh, yeah, kids, family, great. Yeah, we're all, get back in the car after church. Why? There was no prep time for the Sabbath. Do you honor the Sabbath with your time? On the day of the Sabbath, when you're here, are you bidding your time till I shut up so you can go eat and nothing more has changed? Well, you're not honoring the Lord with your time. And you're not honoring the Sabbath with your time. What about your talent? Oh, preacher, I ain't got no talent. If you choose to believe a lie about yourself, that's on you. The fact of the matter is, every one of you has a talent. If you were to ask me in 94, if I felt I had a talent to be a minister, I would have laughed you out of the room. I still work on it. I still am trying to get better at it. It is a constant thing. But when the Lord called me into ministry, I said to him, as Moses has said, you've got the wrong guy. I'm an introvert. Joke's on you. I hate talking to people. Like I said, my ideal vacation spot is an island alone. Quiet. Just, yeah, that's it right there. Somebody laughed and ruined it. I'm sorry. Anyhow. That's it. Working in ministry has made me more extroverted, which sounds kind of weird, but that's kind of thing. It wasn't me that did that. When I was in high school, my career counselor said, never take a job that required mathematics and never take a job that requires a lot of reading, because you stink at both. I was a machinist for 10 years doing advanced trig and geometry. I don't know how I did it. I hold 2 master's degrees now. And glutton for punishment, going for a doctorate, which requires a lot of reading. It's not me that has enabled me to be able to do the reading. It is definitely the power of the Holy Spirit that enables that to provide me a talent. You see, you go back and look at the individuals who are making the stuff for the tabernacle. It's the Holy Spirit that is going to indwell them, to equip them to do great things. I ain't got a talent. Get busy. The Lord will help you develop one. Well, I'm old. Therefore, my time and my talent are no longer necessary. You can believe that. Moses is writing this at about the age of 82. Do you honor the Lord with your time and your talent? You have been indwelled with specific gifts and abilities, and you choose to hold them back from the service of the Lord. We should not have to beg you to help out in Awana Children's Church or Sunday School. There are other people here observing somebody else's Sabbath rest because you are too lazy to properly utilize your time and your talent. I can't believe you called me lazy. Throw a rock in a pack of dogs, the one that yelped, the one that got hit. There are people that are observing somebody else's Sabbath, and that is ungodly. The church is an all-in proposition, or it's a not-in proposition. Do you honor the Sabbath with your time and your talent? Look, I understand. Some of you have jobs where on Sunday you go to work, and that's fine. We're not draconian about that. But there are some folks that would rather be at the lake than here, that would rather be doing something else than here, that would rather be watching football than here, that would rather be doing this than here. Then you are neither honoring God with your time or your talent. And you are certainly not keeping the Sabbath set apart and holy. tithe. Do you honor the Lord with your tithe? See, the Sabbath is also means by which the tithe comes in. You see this here in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, that at the first of the week they were to collect the money. And a lot of times people like to go to this example. Well, in the first century, they didn't talk about 10%. You're right, because in the first century, it was a 100% proposition. They sold it all and gave to the church. How many of you would like that 10% back now? See, when people bring that argument up, they are looking for a means to escape the requirement that is due, not willing to honor the Sabbath and the Lord with their tithe. Commitment Sunday, we had a church, we had folks come, and they committed more funding for the church this year than last year. Let me give you the reality. We were about $6,000 off last year at this time per month. And we have not had a shift in population. What does that mean? Same number of people, less number of givers. Some folks have put money on that piece of paper because they felt embarrassed not to put a number down. Well, here's the thing, folks. You have obligated yourself to the number you put down. Some of you have intended to do well, tithe, and went to do well, but then things happen and you had to pay for bills. I understand that. And then there are other folks that like to use their tithe as leverage or as a vote. And since they don't like the way things go, well, they're going to withhold their tithe. None of those are godly. Matter of fact, every one of those are a repugnant answer before the Lord. Hophni and Phinehas are destroyed. The text in 1 Samuel is clear. It says, I desire to murder these men because they stole from the Lord. That's on you. Does not affect me. If you wish to incur that upon yourself, rock on. Enjoy the harvest of that. You say, well, Ashley, what about that? Well, I'm glad you asked. The tithe is a requirement. It's not an option. It's not an optional thing. It's not a, well, if I have the ability to. It's a requirement. It is the firsts of your labor, not the scraps of your labor. Proverbs chapter 3, we use this for Commitment Sunday. And a lot of times when we start in 9, we see it as a suggestion. Honor the Lord with your wealth, as you can honor the Lord or you cannot. Well, you got to go back up to verse 1 and see that it's not an option. Proverbs 3:1, my son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. So this section is commandments. For length of days and life and peace will be added to you. Honor the Lord with your wealth. It's not a suggestion. It is not, well, if I get around to it, Lord, you'll get a cut. It is a command. And it is an obligation. And it is a requirement. And many of you are inviting punishment upon you for not doing so. With your first fruits and all you produce, so your barns will be filled and plenty. We love 10, but we don't want to do 9. Leviticus 27 and Deuteronomy 14, we're going to look at those just for a minute. Every tithe of the land, whether seed or land or fruit or the tree, is the Lord's. Haggai makes it clear that the gold and silver is the Lord's, not yours. The gold is mine, the silver is mine. Your bank account is mine. We like to think it's ours or the government's, but it's the Lord's. And to withhold that, whether you are trying to vote with your tithe, or you promised to donate money and you decided not to, or that you fell on hard times and you will not honor the Lord with that, is theft from God. You readjust your lifestyle so you honor your obligation. Well, I don't like that. Didn't ask you what you liked. I'd like to eat all that I want, but as you can tell, sometimes it makes me grow a third chin. Deuteronomy 14, you shall tithe all the yield of your seed. Sounds very similar. From the field year by year, and before the Lord God, in the place that he will choose, you make his name dwell there, and you shall eat the tithe and grain, and the wine and the oil, and the firstborn of your herd, and the flock that you may learn to fear the Lord. Tithing is an aspect of fearing the Lord, which is an aspect of keeping things holy, which is an aspect of honoring the Sabbath. And one of the important things about this, you say, well, you don't understand. You don't understand. This is how I've been raised. This is how we've always done it. I don't want to fulfill this. It's fine. The book of Haggai makes it very clear what happens when we withhold the things from God. In the book of Haggai, the story was that they began to build themselves nicer homes than the house of the Lord. The house of the Lord was in absolute ruins, and the only thing that was there was the altar, and it was uncovered. And Haggai tells the people God tells the people through the prophet Haggai that many of you look for food and cannot find it. You look for wine, but there is none. You take your gold and put it into a purse with holes. Translation, the Lord is taking from you. He gets his tithe. He gets his honor. He gets his worship. Voluntarily or involuntarily. Do you honor the Lord with your time? Is your mind's focus week to week, day to day, about coming here to worship the one true God? Or is it about everything else other than the week? You show up for an hour going, and then you go and eat and wonder what that noise was I was making during the entire sermon. Is your talent something that is held captive by the things of God and you utilize to the glories and the furtherance of the kingdom? Or do you simply use the cop-out excuse, I don't have a talent? Folks, please stop lying to yourself and to the Lord. Do you honor the Lord with your tithe? Or do you view it as something that you get around to, as the scraps left over? Last week I made the mention. The first century church would never buy a brand new TV, put it in their house, and give the old TV to the church. The first century church would buy a new TV, put it in the church, and keep the old TV. That's the doctrine of first fruits. They understood that. See, a lot of times when we come to tithing, we bring scraps to the Lord. And then go, that'll hold you. So are you honoring the Lord with your tithe? Matthew 23:23. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you tithe mint, dill, cumin, and neglect the weightier matters of the law, justice, and mercy, and faithfulness. You tithe out of show, but you do not follow the things of God. These you ought to have done without neglecting the other. You blind guides, you strain at a gnat, and you swallow a camel. Luke 11:42. But woe to you, Pharisees, for you tithe mint, rue, and every herb, and neglect justice and the love of God. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others. Woe to you, Pharisees, for you love the best seats in the synagogues, greetings in the marketplaces. Woe to you, for you are like an unmarked grave, and people walk over them without knowing it. Oh, we like our pews. We like our place of prominence. But we don't want to honor the Lord with our talents and our time and our tithe. And the text calls us hypocrites. Now, why is this tied to rest, refreshment, and renewal? When you are honoring the Lord and doing the things with the Lord, and you are going about the things in a right and proper manner of worship, rest simply is not the cessation of work. That's tied to it. But there's also the rest that comes in the peace of being in the center of God's will. There are some people that are so busy within our church, they have yet to experience rest from all the activities because they go from job to work at church, and no one there is willing to lend an extra hand. And they are burning themselves out in a bright, shiny ball. Well, everyone else goes, glad I'm not called for that task. Refreshment and renewal. There becomes when you begin to dig into the Word of God and begin to set the things of God as holy, in which you will find refreshment in following those things. I wasn't a tither at one time. I am now, and I find that very refreshing and renewing. Why? Because now I have a deeper understanding of what it requires to be the thing I call, which is a Christian. And the obligation that I have to honor the Lord, not simply with the words that I say out of my mouth or the time I spend with people, but with the substantial things that comes into my wallet. And I have learned to get by on less because of what I give to the Lord. And I receive renewal from that and refreshment. We all want the rest. We all want the renewal. And we all want the refreshment. But we don't want to give of our time and our talent and our tithes. And you will not have this if you are not giving this. So how do you honor the Sabbath? How do you honor the Sabbath? Is it a unique day? Is it a day you plan for? Is it a day you look forward to being? Do you focus in on it with everything of your being during the week? Because that's the requirement. You are to love the Lord your God with all your and. Is the Lord's Sabbath unique? Is it set apart? Is it holy? Or when the world looks at you, do they wonder when your holy day is? Can they tell a distinct change in you by the day you're at? Or do you treat one day as the same? And folks, I'm going to tell you right now, what you hold in contempt right now, the next generation will hold in absolute disdain. What are you teaching? Are you honoring the Lord with your time, your talent, and your tithe? You're here today, and you've listened to this sermon and say, you know what, Brother Ashley? I haven't honored the Lord with every fiber of my being. It'd be a great opportunity for you to sit where you're at, or as the praise band comes and you sing, stand and sing, as you take a moment where you are. Take stock and measure of the importance of the Sabbath in your life. Is it a distinct day that is holy and set apart, or is it just another day in the week? Maybe somebody here that says, you know what, this is my first time attending here, and I don't fully understand all that you're saying, but I feel a desire to come and know more about this God. I have my microphone turned off. I'll be right here. We'll sit and talk about the wonderful grace of our loving God and Father. Some of you may be attending for a while but haven't joined as members of the church. I invite you today that you join the fellowship of Skyline Baptist Church and join into the fellowship of this wonderful body. As the praise band sings, if you will stand.